Hello, I'm Samantha and welcome to my sofa. We will be going into the sewing room, but I just wanted to talk to you first about what I'm going to be making today, which is my 1940s colour block tie front crop top. And I thought, first of all, we'd look at colour blocking. And so if you say to most people, when did colour blocking start to be a trend in fashion? They would probably think of the 1960s and specifically dresses like this by Yves Saint Laurent. This was shown in the autumn winter collection of 1965 to 1966. Strangely, on the internet, it is often dated as 1946. And I think that is because two ideas got conflated, that colour blocking really began as a thing in the, really began as a thing as in the late 30s, 40s. And this is a particularly famous colour block dress. So I think what happened is somebody put the two together, 1940s and this dress, made one fact, and of course it's then been copied and proliferated throughout the internet that this dress was produced in 1946. And sure you'll agree with me, it's clearly a classic 60s sack dress. And in fact, not only do I think it's a 1960s dress, but I ultimately found that the Metropolitan Museum of Art also thinks it's a 1960s dress, and they have it as shown by Yves Saint Laurent in 1965 to 66. So yeah, Yves Saint Laurent, 1965-66, this wonderful Pierre Mondrian, the Dutch painter, inspired dress. But actually, colour blocking started as a trend in fashion sooner. So, and it's a real illustration of the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. So in the late 30s, kind of 30s time of the Great Depression, late 30s, of course the war started in 1939, 40s, fabric rationing, and it's a time where a lot of people think, well, lives has been very drab, fabric rationing. Actually, people were very talented sewers then. The challenge of fabrics not being easily available meant that fabric was really valued. So if you made a dress, you wanted it to be a special dress. It wasn't a throwaway item, but you might not have enough fabric to make one dress. You might only have enough for like 3/4 of a dress. So what you might do is combine two fabrics, and people probably started to do it because they needed to, but actually it looked so fun and made such a statement. Pattern designers soon started creating designs with colour blocking in mind. So, well, there they are. No, they're not. So for example, this pattern, and you can see, if you've got enough fabric and you want to, you might make the whole dress of one fabric, or you might, as illustrated here, just do the bodice yoke in different fabric. Both those designs have a different fabric for the yoke. Or this also 40s design where you might make one colourway, or you might make this actually much more striking design, two fabric colours. Here's another pretty design. It's not showing colour blocked, but I think it's easy to see how you could colour block it. So you could just do the side panels there, for example, perhaps the sleeves too, and then another pattern that I've made up myself, but in one colour, this one from the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company. So lots of ways that you could colour block that design. Pick out the yoke and the belt, you could pick out the panels. So This colour blocking, I think, has a lot of relevance today, where a lot of people doing kind of thrift flips, where ones that I see tend to be a large garment made up into a small garment because it's easy to cut away the fabric. But what people could start doing, which they certainly did in the 40s, is combine two items of clothing to make one. Or, this is an idea close to my heart, if you, like me, love to collect vintage fabrics, but they often come in the form of remnants and not enough to make one dress. Got a few examples here. This lovely 40s rayon, little paisley design, so pretty. Not very much of it, but I thought I can combine it with another colour. I could pick out the red or the emerald green or the blue or the cream, and just use it to make pretty details in a dress. Pretty little paisley, 1940s piece of fabric, kind of silky rayon. So I could pick out the blue, I could pick out the pink, not enough for a whole garment, but definitely with a pattern that offers the opportunity to do colour blocking, I could use that and it would be really pretty. For example, this is a teeny tiny little piece of vintage Liberty paisley print, probably 1980s. Lovely quality, Liberty of London, lovely, but tiny piece. However, I have lots of fabric. Show you there how it goes together. Lots of fabric left over from dress I made earlier in the year. It's in like an olive green wool. So those are going to combine beautifully to make a dress with some lovely details. And then just one more I'll show you, which is this one, which is a vintage 1940s fabric. Here we are, rayon again, very pretty, not much of it. But last time I was out in London's Goldhawk Road, I saw this. And as you can see, how cute and then pretty are they going to look together? So colour blocking offers lots of opportunities to use up fabric remnant, but it also creates really fun statement garments in and of itself. So for example, the crop top I'm going to make, which I made with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in mind, and I chose scarlet and royal blue to kind of look like a flag. So colour blocking really got going late 30s, 40s, went on through the 50s. There are lovely 50s patterns showing some colour block designs, and into 50s into early 60s, but I can't go through that time period without mentioning fabulous dress worn by Midge Maisel in The Marvellous Mrs. Maisel, which is actually very similar colours to the crop top I'm going to make, the sort of scarlet and blue, lovely. In the 60s, we had the kind of mod look, colour blocking was kind of really popular. Carried on through the 70s is this pattern by Diane von Furstenberg, who invented the wrap dress. She started doing wrap designs in around 1972, but 1974 produced her iconic wrap dress. And not only a wrap dress, but here we are, Diane von Furstenberg design colour block wrap dress. And the 70s had, lots of colour blocking, very groovy. Into the 80s, colour blocking completely lent itself to power dressing. So a lot of the 80s patterns have the distinctive 80s shoulders, of course. And colour blocking used to enhance that sort of powerful statement look. 1990s, more colour blocking, patterns still being produced, kind of lovely colour block details. And actually colour blocking has never gone out of style. So with all that in mind, I'm going to get to the sewing room and start making my own colour block tie front crop top from the 1940s. And this is the pattern I'll be using from the Vintage Sewing Pattern Company. So I've made my mock-up from 2 bed sheets and I'm really pleased with the result. I didn't have to do any adaptation to the pattern. The only thing that I would say is that making sure the appropriate colours facing is with the correct colour in the pattern piece, it can be surprisingly mind-boggling. So here I am up in my loft where I have my cutting table. I'm spreading out my Liberty lovely royal blue Tana lawn, and I'm going to cut out one piece for the front and one for the back, because the other front piece and back piece will be cut from the lovely length of Liberty Scarlet Tana lawn. Just making sure that the grain line is lying correctly and that each piece will properly mirror the contrast colour. And then just pinning in place before cutting out. Wearing my 1940s house dress here, just with a vintage Laura Ashley blouse. So checking that the front and back marry up properly, and then just laying down the front sections to see all the colours are correct before I cut out the facing pieces. Making sure that they are on the grain line too, and double checking that I have the right colour facing for the appropriate pattern piece. And then pinning the back pieces together before stitching them together. I'm going to do French seams, so I'll sew wrong sides together first. So I'm just pressing out the seam before turning it to restitch for the French seam. You can never press enough when you're making a garment. It makes all the difference. Just a little view of my dog Treacle keeping me company in the sewing room. Pressing both sides of the seam that I'm going to stitch up there. And pressing again to make sure that those French seams are lying really nice and flat, and then laying over the front pieces and matching the shoulders and the side seams. And then back to the sewing machine for more stitching. And then I'm stitching the ends of the facing together. So there's 2 sets of facing for each side, 4 pieces of facing in all, so 2 on each side in the contrast colours. And now turning under the hem on the facing and stitching that down in the matching thread colour. And that's something to say about sewing a colour block garment, is that you do need to wind bobbins in 2 different colours of thread, and you do need to change thread colour regularly to match the colour of fabric that you're stitching. And then leaving the needle in at the corners and turning to create a nice neat finish. And there it is. And now stitching those facing pieces to the main garment. Right sides together, of course, to be turned in. And changing thread colour when you meet a different contrast colour. And then I turned under the hem and machine stitched because, you know, time. And then out into my blowy garden, having given the top a press. And here it is in its fabulous flag-like Jubilee colours. And here is my whole Jubilee outfit with my Jubilee tennis short and my Thai France colour block crop top. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you for more sewing adventures next Friday. Please subscribe, and here's another little glimpse of the back of the top.